Welcome to the OK, Let's Learn podcast. This is two podcasts in one. One where you get tons of different stories and commentaries on books that we read together. It's our OK Book Club. And another one where we just learn tons of different topics and people. My name is Kevin O'Keefe. So today, OK, let's learn about butterflies. Yes. Another in our series of podcast episodes on the life cycle of different plants, chickens, frogs, and we're going to dive into the butterfly. It's perfect for grade school. You know what? Having them in class, not only seeing these chickens being born, but transforming and going from the caterpillar ultimately through and seeing a live butterfly being born is just really one of nature's miracles, no doubt. So, number one, let's start off. What is a butterfly? They're not birds. They're not flies. They're not bees. They're insects. Yes, insects have 6 legs and 3 main body parts, and that is our butterfly. You have an outer skeleton instead of bones, and they actually, if you could actually shrink yourself and just kind of sit right there on the butterfly's wing, you wouldn't see smooth skin. You'd see thousands of tiny overlapping scales. Yes, scales on a butterfly's wing. And these scales kind of bend the light, and that's what creates these beautiful orange and blue and amazing different colors. Now, up front, a lot of people think, what about the moth? It's not a butterfly. A moth is not a butterfly. They're cousins, but they're not twins. Butterflies usually fly in the daytime. They warm themselves in the sun, and they rest their wings. If you think of a butterfly, it's resting its wings. It's like closing like a book. The moths, they're flying at night, and they hold their wings flat. And up front, our butterflies, they are cold-blooded, which means they can't make their own heat. They're dependent on the weather outside. So if it's hot, they're happy. If it's cold, they can hardly move. And up front also, they only live a few months unless they're migrating where they will live many months and they head down to Florida. But these butterflies, you'll see them out obviously in the spring when it gets warm, and you have to have the right environment to attract a lot of butterflies. But let's dive into some of the basics. So, like all insects, the butterfly's body is broken up into 3 parts, starting at the head, the middle part, the thorax, and the ending part, the abdomen. The head, it's got 2 large eyes. Each eye is actually made up of thousands of tiny little lenses that kind of help it notice its motion, is able to move in lots of different directions. As you know, with the butterflies, they're just fluttering all over the place. And they actually, with their eyes, they don't see the world like we do. They can actually see colors that we can't, like ultraviolet patterns on flowers that kind of act like glowing lights that are guiding them to the nectar. Between the eyes are 2 antennae, and they're just not there to look good. They help the butterflies smell. They sense the wind. They actually help them keep balance when it doesn't look like they're keeping good balance when they're flying. They're not gliding. They're not beautiful, but they are serving this purpose about keeping their balance while they're flying. Basically, without these antennae, I can just imagine what they would look like. Curled under the head is one of the strangest body parts, the proboscis. It looks like this little tiny hose that's rolled up like a party horn. When a butterfly finds a flower, the proboscis unrolls and slides deep inside to sip the nectar. The middle part, the thorax, this is basically where everything is happening. You got all 6 legs, and you got all the 4 wings that are attached there. And the legs, they do more than walk. They actually taste with their feet. Are you hearing this? They taste with their feet. When they land on a flower, sensors in their legs tell them whether the nectar is good or not. Sometimes they land on mud puddles and like drink salty water for the minerals instead of the sugar. It's just absolutely amazing. And along the sides of the body are tiny breathing holes. They're called spiracles. And so these butterflies don't breathe, obviously, through their mouths. The air goes in and out these side openings. And then at the back end, if you take a look at a picture of a butterfly, nice and close up, the end is the abdomen. Basically, that's the organs that we're digesting all the food, and then ultimately that helps with reproduction. And yes, it also helps balance the butterfly when it's flying. So the wings, I mentioned there's 4 of them. They're thin, they're wide, and again, like I mentioned, they have these scales. And they help control not just the color of the butterfly, but they control the temperature. Now, we've been talking about the adult butterfly, but let's talk about the life cycle, right? The beginning are eggs. They're tiny little white eggs. You'll see them on leaves. And the mother butterfly just doesn't drop these eggs anywhere. They have to be the right plant, and they need to be sitting there. So then when they become caterpillars, the babies, they need to eat, and they will eat whatever leaf they hatch on. Monarch mothers, for example, they only choose milkweed. Without it, their caterpillars can't even survive. And like I said, the eggs are really tiny, smaller than like a grain of rice. And they almost look like little pearls glued to a leaf. Inside each one is a complete set of instructions. And that owner's manual ends up cracking in about 3 to 7 days. Yeah, and out crawls a caterpillar. And its job is simple. Eat and grow. And it's funny. They sometimes double their size in just a day or two. If we grew that quickly, it's like a newborn baby would become the size of a school bus. So this caterpillar just goes along its day, eating, and it kind of basically, its body has these little breathing holes, right? And its head actually only senses light and dark. But they're out there, they're staying alert for predators, and ultimately, they're caterpillars for only 10 to 14 days. And during that time, it becomes a lot heavier and a lot bigger than it started out, as I mentioned. Then obviously something amazing happens. We got some metamorphosis that's going on now. It stops eating. It finds a safe place and it hangs upside down. Yes, attached to, it's like this little silk that comes out of its mouth, attaches it to a tree branch, hanging upside down. And yeah, here we go. A chrysalis is formed. People say cocoon, but it's really a chrysalis. It's a hard shell made from its own skin. Moths actually use silk, but the butterflies, they build armor. Inside the chrysalis, the caterpillar, it's not sleeping. It actually dissolves. Most of its body breaks into this like thick liquid. Think about this. It's just unbelievable. Nature is so amazing. And it's like the old parts are kind of like recycled and the new parts grow. The wings form, the antennae appear. A completely new mouth develops. Even the nervous system, right? It's all reorganized. But here's the thing. Hidden inside the caterpillar were tiny wing structures all along, like almost like folded maps waiting to open. Inside the chrysalis, these maps ultimately form these unbelievable wings that we will see in just a moment. The shell blends into the color often of barks or leaves, so it's, yes, hiding itself from any predators that are out there. And there you go. Now, 7 to 14 days later, everything then happens. The shell breaks. The butterfly comes out. It looks like at first it's unfinished. Its wings are wrinkled and it's wet. The butterfly pumps fluid through its veins, stretching them wide. Sunlight ultimately warms the muscles, and just in a few hours, the wings harden, and it's only at that point that they can fly. But it happens pretty seamlessly, pretty quick. Now, they can't fly if it's cold. On chilly mornings, they just sit with their wings open, collecting the heat, almost like solar panels, right? But once it's warm now, they can glide around up to 12 miles an hour. And yes, the wind can take them even further. So as I mentioned with the life cycle of our chickens, right? Going from the egg to a actual chick, it took 3 weeks. And then we talked about the frog with the egg going to an adult frog. You're talking about 3 months. And here it is with the butterfly, basically from an egg to a flying butterfly takes basically a month. But here's the problem. Unlike our other friends, this poor butterfly only lives a few months. And again, unlike the monarch butterfly, the migratory butterflies, yes, they will go into the further seasons, so they may live up to 7 or 8 months, but, they don't have a very long life, unfortunately. But they live an important, very important and productive life. During that short time, they pollinate plants. They escape predators, and they lay eggs to start the cycle all over again. So let's talk about these monarchs. You've got to be wondering this. What is up with this? They travel all the way down to Florida? No, not to Florida. They actually go to central Mexico. So from where I am in New Jersey, these monarch butterflies are the ones that are born in late summer, early fall, when it's getting cold. And it's kind of like as a caterpillar, they sense, hey, you know what? It's cold. I'm going to store my energy and I'm going to focus instead of laying eggs. And my lifespan being only, a few weeks, I am going to fly. And that is what they end up doing. They ended up literally going 2,500 miles, 3,000 miles, and they go, it's almost as if they're hardwired with the Earth's magnetic field to know where to go. So now that they're end up being clustered all together in the same spot in these trees in Mexico, right? They're just chilling at this point. They're barely flying. They're saving energy. Why? Because then in the early spring, they start heading north again. And now on their trip north, no way do they make it all the way back to New Jersey. Instead, they lay eggs. And yes, their life is over. But of course, their children, they end up continuing to fly north. And they lay eggs. And then they pass away. As you know, they don't live very long. So another generation ends up moving further north. So ultimately, you got one monarch butterfly coming all the way down, and then 3 to 4 generations to get back up north. And you've got your great-great-grandson that ends up hanging out in that same backyard up in Jersey as the great-great-grandpa was doing not just even less than a year before. Now, there's upwards of 20,000 different species of butterflies in the world, but here in the United States, there's only about 750. So if you look in your backyard, you'll recognize some of these if you Google their pictures, but you've got, other than the monarch, you've got the black swallowtail butterfly. You've got the painted lady. That may be familiar to some of you. You've got this cabbage white butterfly that obviously you'll sometimes confuse with a moth. You got a tiger swallowtail butterfly. And even one is this common buckeye, which if you look at it, it's got these circles as if it's, again, just like a painting, just so remarkable. So to wrap up our podcast, just again, the life cycle of the butterfly. The butterfly lays eggs. The eggs become caterpillars. The caterpillars become chrysalis. The chrysalis becomes butterflies. And yeah, the story begins again. So a few final fun facts. Their body temperature must be at least 85 degrees Fahrenheit for them to fly. But if it's below 55 degrees, they can't even move. The largest butterfly is the Queen Alexandra birdwing. Its wingspan is a foot wide, living in the rainforests of Papua New Guinea, and the smallest is just 1/8 of an inch, and that one is in Africa. The tiny caterpillar, also known as a larva, and when it actually gets older, I mentioned that, but what it does is it sheds its skin, and that shedding is called molting. They do this multiple times throughout their short life, and they even eat their own skin. Yum, yum. Friends, thanks for staying with me on this journey, learning all about butterflies. Please reach out to me at kevmok21@gmail.com. Questions, comments, requests for new episodes. If you could rate and review me on Apple Podcasts, that always helps. And in the description, the podcast description, you'll find a link to our Facebook page, Okay, Let's Learn. So, until next time, friends, have fun and keep learning.